Our next topic is auto-rotation. If the user changes the device orientation, for example, they're holding the phone in portrait mode and they rotate it to the right or left and end up in landscape, or maybe vice versa, the application might want to adjust the screen layout for that user. So in this particular example, this is the photo roll app on my iPhone, and when I rotate, when I'm in the album view and I rotate, you can see that it accommodates my device position and redisplays the content using the new orientation. Now, when the device is rotated, that top level view will be reoriented if the view controller returns yes from the method should auto rotate, if the app allows rotation in the orientation, and this is specified in the General tab on the app target and Xcode, and we'll demonstrate that to you in our next video. And then finally, if the view controller returns the new orientation in the method named support interface orientations. So if we want to force a particular orientation, we can actually override this particular method in our custom view controller, supported interface orientation, and return back a bitmap that specifies which subset of the orientations or orientation that we want. Now, it's important when you implement that method that whatever you return is always a subset of what you've set under your General tab. So at your application level, you'll specify which of the 4 orientations that app supports. And you always need to make sure that your supported interface orientation method returns a subset of those. If it does not, then your application will actually crash. So when we think about the use of rotation, there's a couple of different situations or scenario. There's what we call compensatory. And so what that means is when the user changes the orientation of how they're holding that device, we might want to accommodate them. We may not. We may decide as programmers there would be absolutely no sense in showing this particular interface in portrait, for example, and force it to landscape. But often, if it makes sense, we would want to compensate for that device orientation and allow the user to see and interact with the application in the particular orientation that they've chosen. The other thing is forced rotation, where we, the programmer, want to make a decision about the orientation and make it basically force that particular orientation and not allow the user to reorient by changing the position of the device. Now, we should try to support different device orientations whenever it makes sense. So for example, supporting landscape is particularly useful when the soft keypad is displayed and the user is entering text. So I often do this when I'm entering text on my iPhone. I like to go into landscape just because the keyboard's bigger and it fits my thumbs better. And I find it very annoying when I'm forced to enter text in portrait. So that would be an example where I would try to support both orientations. Now, auto layout constraints may help us support those 90-degree different orientations. So for example, going from portrait to landscape right or left is 90 degrees. And typically auto layout constraints will help us adjust for those different things. And of course, if we're going 180 degrees from either landscape left and landscape right, or from portrait to upside down, well then it's pretty trivial. Nothing really needs to be laid out because the dimensions are the same. But sometimes when we're doing those 90-degree orientation shifts, the auto layout constraints might not be enough. For example, on an iPad, often we'll use split views, where when we're in landscape, we'll show the view in a split view, but when we go back to portrait, you'll see only one view with a popover up on the navigation bar. And so in some situations, we might want to do more than auto layout constraints. So in the next video, we're going to take a look at auto rotation, and we'll do a couple of things. We'll do a compensatory situation where we have a view that supports all the different orientations, so no matter what the user does with the device, we'll reorient and make it look good for them. And then we'll also do a forced orientation where we're going to look at a nice photo in landscape that wouldn't look as good in portrait. And so we're going to make the application automatically rotate to landscape whenever they segue into that particular view. So watch the next video.